Pac-12 this year should really come down to two teams, Oregon and Stanford, with the potential of Oregon State to probably creep up in the mix and compete for that division as well. Oregon, I want to see how they handle the national championship loss hangover. They lost the national championship last year to Auburn. I want to see how they handle that. Also with the Willie Lyles allegations that were brought upon this year. Also with Lake Sheestrung transferring to Baylor. I want to see how they do with that. I want to see Darren Thomas improve his decision making a little bit and his accuracy. Everybody knows he's a playmaker with his legs, but I want to see what he can do with his arm as well, especially when it comes to decision making and accuracy. They're fine at the running back position. They're really deep at that position. You got true freshman D'Anthony Black Mamba Thomas, who's going to come in, who's definitely going to make an impact. You got Kenyon Barner, who's going to make an impact. And you have this year, I think, one of the favorites to win the Heisman, and LaMicheal James coming back this year as well. So they're deep. They're stocked at that position as well. At running back, I mean. At the wide receiver position, they lost their leader last year, Jeff Mayo. They lost him to the draft. He was a senior. Lost a lot of yards, 77 receptions, over 1,000 yards. I want to see who's going to step up in that role and help it produce. Is it going to be a guy like Josh Huff? Is it going to be one of the young guys they brought in this year with the freshman class? Whether it be Blackman or one of these guys that they just got from California. They have a tight end in David Pulse who they really love. I like him as well. Very underrated tight end in this league, in this league as well as the country. Very good hands, very solid route runner, good blocker. He's going to be using a blocking game a lot. He's going to be really a safety blanket for them. But I think Josh Huff is going to be a guy everybody's going to realize at the end who's a guy who can motion into the backfield. He's another playmaker to that offense, that high tempo offense that they run. I really want to see what they do with the offensive line. They got to replace 3 starters. That offensive line is tricky because you don't have. I'm not saying that you don't have to be good, but you have to know what you're doing, know your assignments as well. They're like thin guys, mobile guys, especially since they run that zone triple option read type of offense. So I want to see who steps up at the offensive line. They really need help over there. Defensive line, they're really weak. They lost a couple of guys like Brandon Blair last year. They really couldn't get pressure on a lot of teams up front. They usually send linebackers and stuff on blitzes and as well. I want to see what they can do as a pass rush. They have to retool their defensive line. They're really going to struggle with that defensive line getting a pass rush or even stopping the run at that matter. But once again, their front seven is really weak. Their linebackers, they have some young guys, but they lost leaders like Spencer Pacing and Casey Matthews, the heart and soul of that team, basically, if you want to say it, because those were 2 leaders and 2 guys that they felt as leaders and team motivators. So I want to see what they do there. Solid secondary led by John Boyner, Boyndet. Really solid. Cliff Harris, a lockdown corner. Is he going to be playing this year? Getting arrested? I don't know. I want to see what that situation is, but he's one of the best corners in the whole entire country. Definitely a number 1 pick playmaker at the kick and punt return position. Their special teams are phenomenal at that. There's nothing wrong with that for them. Stanford, if everybody knows, is going to be Andrew Luck. Best quarterback in the whole country. Number 1 overall pick when he comes out. He's a guy that a lot of guys have a lot of high expectations for. You want to know what he's going to do. Is he going to take a step back after losing Coach Harbaugh? They hired in-house, so it's not a different scheme that they're going to be running offensively. But I just want to see, can he progress? Can he become better? He said he wants to complete at least 70% of his passes, maybe 80% of his passes this year. That's really high for a quarterback and expectation that he wants to command. But I think he's really good. He's going to be a guy you're going to see in New York. He's going to be a guy at all the award shows, getting all the awards, Davey O'Brien Award, Manning Awards. He's going to get those awards because he's a really talented quarterback. One of the most underrated players in the whole entire country, I think, is Stephen Taylor. This team is so involved, or all the hype is around Andrew Luck. Everybody forgets Stephen Taylor, who's a 1,000-yard back, who's probably one of the most underrated backs in the whole country. If he could be effective in the rushing game, he has great hands out the backfield. Very smart guy, very smart runner. Patient in the hole, looks for holes and explodes through them. If he can help them, if he can continue improving and get even better numbers, I think he can be a sleeper for the Doak Walker Award this year. Very strong offensive line. I love their offensive line led by Jonathan Martin, who's probably the best. I think, if not number two, if not number one, he's the second best left tackle. I think in this conference, I think he's one of the best tackles in the country. He might be a number one pick, number one, number two overall pick. Also, guard David DeCastro. David DeCastro is another guy. He's a mauler type. This offensive line is really solid. Very smart offensive line. Wide receivers, they're fine in the wide receiver positions with Chris Osuwa and Griff Whalen. Like I said, those guys. Chris Osuwa is a guy who could stretch the field. Whalen's a guy who could work those underneath routes. Very good route runner. If this team can really gel offensively and just keep continuing and improving like they did last year, this could be one of your teams who was a dark horse for a national championship run. Their defense is really strong. I love their defense, especially with their linebackers and Shayne Shovak and Chase Martin. Shovak is one of the best linebackers in the whole entire country. He's the top guy. I think he's going to be an NFL superstar. Strong, fast, very smart. Knowing that he's at Stanford, he's a very smart player. I like him a lot. Chase Martin is one of those guys who's going to be underrated this year. Nobody's going to really hear about him, but he's got one of those guys I think that can step up and be one of those guys who are first team all Pac-10 defense, Pac-12 defense, I mean, or just get honorable mentions. The first or second team and get honorable mention. He's a guy that I really like. They have questions at the cornerback position, but extremely good at safety. They have a guy that they got out of Orlando, Wayne Lyons. I think he's going to be a star. Very good speed, very good coverage. But the one guy that they have, Delane Howell, he's a ball hawk at the safety position. If that ball is by his vicinity, he's going to go up and grab it. He had 5 picks last year. Very good tackler. So I really like this Stanford team. Like I said, if they can continue and just get better and better, because last year they had Oregon beat 21. It was about 21-0, I think, in the first quarter, and they just let it. I guess they was just too young defensively, and they just let this team back. Moving on to Oregon State, I think Oregon State is one of those teams that could really shock a lot of people. I love Ryan Katz. I think Ryan Katz is an NFL quarterback. He can make all the throws. Got a really impressive arm. He needs to improve his decision making and accuracy. How is this team going to rush the ball now? Can Ryan McCants step up and produce the way and basically try to help the running game where they lost Jacquizz Rodgers, their best running back probably that they've had in a while over there. They've had a lot of great running backs come out that system. Jacquizz Rodgers is the next one. Can James Rodgers come back from that knee injury that he had last year and return to that playmaker type? They need some playmakers on the outside. I like this tight end Jordan Bishop. I think he's one of those guys that can really help out. Very talented linebackers. I like their linebackers a lot, especially Michael Doctor, who I think is going to be a potential guy. A lot of it that people are not known of, but he's going to be those guys who's probably going to be top 10, a top 10 player in this league as it comes to defensive wise. Like I said, really solid corners. I like their secondary a lot. Brandon Harden, safety Lance Mitchell. I want to see what these guys can step up, if these guys can help out. I think if Ryan Katz can really improve and they can find guys on the run that can run the football and catch the ball and be a playmaker like James Rodgers was, if he can come back, this team is really good. Cal's one of those teams, well, they got to find who's going to step at the running back position. Who's their starting quarterback? Is it going to be Maynard? Is it going to be Manchin? I think their quarterback of the future is Zach Klein, the kid that's coming in next year. He's a really good, talented guy. Tedford, quarterback guru. He knows what he's doing with his quarterbacks. They have two really good wide receivers in Marvin Jones and Keenan Allen. 2 playmakers on the outside. The biggest strength of this team is definitely the offensive line. I want to know on defense, they lost 2 guys in 2 consecutive years, Cameron Jordan and Taisu Alualu, to the draft, the past 2 drafts. I want to see how they can get a pass rush. They're really solid at the linebacker position with Michael Kendricks and DJ Holt. They have a little questions in the back. In the secondary, I want to see how they can get guys over there to step up, especially at corner. I think they're fine, but at the safety position, I think they need to find guys that can help out over there. Moving on, going to Washington. I really like Washington a lot. Is it Keith Price? Is it Nick Montana, excuse me. Nick Montana is famous Montana son. but he lost his job to Keith Price. Keith Price is kind of a dual threat guy that Coach Starks can see. Can he become that leader that Jake Locker was? Can he help out? He's not Jake Locker, but can he just help and improve this team? Because I really think this team has a lot of good talent, especially at the running back position. Chris Polk has star potential. He's a name that you guys are gonna have to watch out for this year around the country. Chris Polk, I think, is one of those guys, big, strong, fast guy at the running back position. Can make you listen. Can be a home run type of hitter. Also, Jermaine Kearse, the wide receiver position. He's another flat out playmaker I like over there. They need depth at that wide receiver position though, just to get playmakers for Keith Price. I think Kason Williams, guy who they kept over there in the Skyline area in Washington, Kason Williams, true freshman coming in. I think he could be one of those guys. Also, Austin Safarian-Jenkins, another big time guy that Coach Stark was able to keep in state and help out for a 5-star guy. A very good, solid blocker, underrated hands, very and decent speed at the tight end position. They're really stout up the middle with their 2 D tackles. I really like their tackles, but they really have questions at pass rushing. Once again, especially with this league with quarterbacks that the Pac-12 is involved in, you need to put pressure on the quarterback. But they're stout up the middle for the run game. Court Denson, I think, is really good at the linebacker position, and they really need to improve their secondary. Washington State, they have 2 guys that you guys need to keep your mind on. Jeff Toole. I think Jeff Toole can be a guy who's going to be playing on Sundays. Has a great NFL arm. He's one of those guys ready for the NFL. And Marquez Wilson, speed demon, 1,000-yard receiver last year as a true freshman. I think he's a future NFL player as well. But overall, Washington State, they really need to improve on the offensive line. They need to improve more receivers, running backs. They're just a team that they need to retool this whole team and try to get this team up to compete in this division, let alone the conference. As I said, I really think Stanford is a team that will probably win this division due to the fact that they're very senior. They're very senior led. Andrew Luck, Heisman Trophy candidate, front runner right now. I think Oregon's defense is really going to take a step back in their offensive line. They have the players that can do it. It's going to be a shootout. You're going to have to try to stop Oregon. I think Stanford can do that. They had him on the road. They had him 21-0 last year at Austin Stadium. Now they're coming to Stanford this year, so I want to see how they do. But I think Stanford pulls away and wins this division.